how do you balance the desire for the team to succeed, to pursue excellence, to win
Yeah.
with this kid's feelings and how much he's actually paying attention?
Yeah. So first and foremost, there's a big old fallacy that exists that you communicate with everyone the same way. Can't. You just flat out can't. Beyond just experience level in terms of the actual task, you have the personality differences.
Hmm.
On the coaching field, I know which kid I can yell at, and I know which kid I gotta hug. And you got to get to know those things in the communication. Even at the pro level, you've got to get to know how to communicate with every single person.
Hmm.
And so in our company, our number one core value is relationships. Relationships over everything else. I can't know how to communicate with Jason unless I have a relationship with him, unless I've invested that time, I've studied. We're at the point now where in building those relationships, we're keeping documents on every single person and how we communicate with them so that we all know how to communicate with this person from the time they interview with us on. How did they respond to this? How did they respond to that? Now, that's one side. The other side of this is this. It's always important as well for people to understand where we're going and what their part is.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Spear and Clover podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jason Spisek, the entrepreneurial evangelist. And this week, I am talking to my new friend, but very quick friend, Atiba de Souza. Atiba, how are you, brother?
Hey, I'm great, man. And you know what? It's so good to see you 2 times in 1 week.
You know, you're going to get sick of me soon, so let's not book another call for a couple of weeks. So listen, I have had the benefit. I mean, we're actually, let's just dive right in. He's wearing a
Yeah.
big Superman hat. You got to tell me about this Superman hat. Every time I've seen you, you've had a Superman hat on. I was doing a little research for the show. I saw Superman. And so I came and I asked you to hold off until we got on. I'm going to address the elephant in the room. Explain that Superman hat.
No, absolutely. So yeah, I am known as the guy in the Superman hat, right? Because every time you see me, I'm going to have a Superman hat on, and it let's face it, it's the brand,
Yeah.
and it's one of those funny things, Jason, because it's the brand, and so everyone assumes that I'm absolutely in love with Superman. Is my favorite superhero. That's not the case. So let me tell you what happened. It was about 10 years ago, and I coached football, and I was taking over a high school team, and I was on my way. It's middle of August, on my way to first day of practice. Okay, and I realized I had forgotten my hat at home. Well, you don't want to be outside for 8 hours in August without a hat on.
Yeah.
It's just too much. And so I pull into the local Walmart to find a bucket hat. And they had two things. They had the traditional fishing bucket hat or a Superman bucket hat. And I did not want the fishing bucket hat. And so I was like, okay, well, Superman hat it is. And I bought that hat and I ended up wearing it for that entire season. And then the staff and the kids started buying me other Superman
Oh,
hats. And that's where it all started. And that just kind of grew this collection of
yeah.
Superman hats that I have and made me the guy in the Superman hat.
Wow, that's a great story. Do you read? We had mentioned before the recording that we both read comics, but do you read Superman comics at all, or not much at
You know,
all?
I really don't, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
I actually don't think I ever have. I've just watched the movies and watched the TV shows.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's again, it's not that it's this huge love with Superman, but I'll tell you this: 10 years later, there's a reason I'm still wearing the hats, right?
Yeah.
Other than it's just the brand, and what it's become is the reality that when I put this hat on, I can't see the S, but you can. You watching, listening, you can. People I meet, they can. And I've come to realize that my job, my role in life is to help bring out the superhero in every single person. So when you see the S is for you, so
Wow.
that you know there's a superhero inside of you. Let's bring that thing out, man.
Wow, that's exciting. I have so much more. I have other questions about that. But first, before we get too far into this, tell
Yeah.
our folks listening exactly kind of who you are, where you're coming from. What is it that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the guy in the Superman hat is also known as the video content Superman. What we do at our agency is we help entrepreneurs who are experts in their field, experts with their craft to create videos to attract more customers and shorten their sales cycle. Yeah, make more money in less time using video. That's what we do.
That's a super interesting point. First of all, I love that you're calling out to something that's so valuable right away, which is shortening that sales cycle. Because so many of us, myself, people that I've worked with, people that we know, they're the guy or gal, right? They are capable of the thing. But getting somebody to understand that, getting somebody to warm up to it and be educated by it, it can be so long that they give up and they never get that client, or they move and shift gears, or they stop posting, or whatever the thing is. And so the fact that you're calling out to the cash conversion cycle or the client conversion cycle is a very powerful one. It's not one that I've ever heard anybody talk about in this context on my show, at least. And so talk to me about like real numbers. Like, what do you see when somebody is who they say they are, but they're struggling with a client conversion cycle? What do we see, and what can we see how do we see that like kind of accordioned and compressed?
Yeah. You know, it's a great question, and it's one that I don't get often enough, and I don't get to, and because of that, I don't get to answer it, because if I just put this information out, it sounds like we're just bragging.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's not what it is. But what we've seen over the course of our business, right? And we started before we were video, we did written content. Okay. So we've transitioned into video first. And what we've seen over the last 13, almost 15 years really, is 50% reduction in your sales cycle.
Wow.
Imagine that for a moment. A 50% reduction in your sales cycle. What does that actually look like? What it looks like is people who call on the phone, people who send you an email, and your sales cycle now is them vetting that what they get when they call you, when they reach out, is what they saw online. That it matches the video. Once they do that, they're in.
Yeah, if you're listening to that and that wasn't valuable to you, Google cash crunch and then think it through a little bit, because I think I've personally lived through a cash crunch a couple of different times, and that is something that can really combat that and really help, especially if you want to scale, if you want to grow quickly as a business. Super interesting. And so obviously you've been doing this for 15 years, but short form video is the whole world right now. How has that played a factor in your business?
It's a great question too. And yes, everyone's into short form. Oh, short form. And I get that question a lot. Hey, so should we just abandon long form and just do short form because it's so cool, it's so fun, you know, the videos are great to watch and you get all the animations and all that wonderful stuff. Here's the deal. People are going to date you through your short form and marry you through your long form. So it's not that short form is bad. Short form is great, but it's part of a system. It's not the system. Long form is not the system. They go together. They go together, absolutely go together. And as a matter of fact, what we teach and the way we do it is you create short form that points to your long form. Yeah, let somebody come in and take 30 seconds of you and say, oh man, you know, I like that. I want to know more about that. Then send them over to watch a 10-minute video. See, people today don't want to invest the 10 minutes with you if they don't know that they're going to get some value out of it. So great, let's give them that value in 45 seconds and then send them to something more substantial.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think so many people, especially if you're like reticent to the media part of business, right? If you just want to make the thing or build the service or whatever it is, and you don't, and the afterthought is the marketing of it. I don't think either of us are those guys, but let's just say you were. I think it's easy to imagine social media, email, cold calling, referrals, outbound as these sort of nebulous things that are just spread out and unconnected. And what you just described is really the beginning of a very linear and progressive path from not being aware of you and your company and your product or your service to being a paying client. Could you help me to kind of align those things? Again, like everybody's going to be a little different, but if you had to, like, where does somebody, like if you had a perfect case scenario, where does somebody first become aware of one of your clients' businesses, and then what does that path look like? Because I think a lot of times people have a hard time putting to get that bridge together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, let's go one step up from that, and then we're going to come down. So we're going to go a little bit higher level and then dive down a little bit with that. Okay. So understand that in your business, for you listening to us right now, okay, in your business, there's something called the buyer's journey, the customer value journey. It goes by tons of different names. But It is the process, and this is what Jason was just alluding to. It is the process that every single customer goes through to become a customer and stay on and become one of your best customers. Now, if you've never stopped and thought about what's that journey, now's the time to start. Because the key to growth and scaling is actually understanding that journey and helping people through the journey, which is the question that Jason just asked. Okay. So that's the first thing. If you've never heard of this before, that's where you got to start in understanding and embracing the fact that the journey exists, whether you've defined it or not.
Yeah.
Whether you've defined it or not. Okay. Now, for us, and what we're looking at and what we're doing here is we're helping our customers create video that do a very, very specific thing. And that is answer their customers' questions. You see, because at the beginning of any journey is always a question. Nobody buys something because they didn't need it. Nobody buys something because it doesn't solve an issue for them. Nobody buys something because it doesn't solve a problem for them. And if it's going to solve a problem, it means they asked a question about that at some point in time. So where do people go to ask questions in 2023?
Google and YouTube, probably.
Exactly.
ChatGPT, a little bit.
So some people do go to ChatGPT, yes. Okay. And we can get to that. We can talk AI too, you know that. But by and large, they're going to go to Google. It is the largest search engine in the world. The second largest search engine in the world is YouTube, which is owned by Google. In other words, Google is number one and number two. They own market share. So when your customer has a pain, has a problem that your service solves, where they're going to go invariably first is to Google. And they're going to go to Google and they're going to ask a question. So we help you create the content that answers those questions. We figure out what those questions are and we answer those. Now, people always say, well, why, man? Why can't we just go to Instagram or have them find us that way on social media and so on and so forth? Well, here's why. There's something called Milgram's Law. I don't know if you know Milgram's Law, Jason, but Milgram's Law says this, and this was astounding to me when I learned this. Okay. People are 90% more likely to blindly follow the first person that educated them on a topic. So if my customer has a problem and they go and they find someone giving them the answer, they're likely blindly going to follow them till payment. Why can't they follow me that way?
Sure.
And so so when we talk about awareness starts at search. Awareness starts at search and answering those questions. Now people say, okay, but then what? And so when you look at any journey of your customer, whether it's called the buyer's journey, blah, 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 whatever it's called, there are stages that the customer is going to go through. And we liken those to 3 stages. You've heard this, Jason, too, right? Know, like, and trust. You have to go through know, they have to get to know you. They got to begin to like you, and then they have to trust you. Well, how does that relate to content? We relate that to content in this way. Why, how, what? At the awareness stage, people are asking why type questions, big philosophical type questions. They want to know, why is this so? What is going to change in the world? How does this solve the problem? Why? The big philosophical questions. After they have those answered, then they get down into the more nitty-gritty of, okay, so how does this actually work? How does your solution actually work? You can create content around that, around the questions that they're asking there. And then the what questions are, okay, can you actually do it for me?
Yeah, that's brilliant.
That's the continuum that we create content for our customers on.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Well, there's two things that pop into my head just as personal interest, and hopefully this resonates. The first would be at night watching TV with my wife after a long day, and I'm on my phone.
Yep.
I don't want a video then, but when I'm in here, I want a video. Do you consider, do you have any kind of information or guidance on like what percentage should be text, what percentage should be video? Should you have each represented? Is it blogs with a video attached? You know, I just want to address that because one thing I've always found is like I would be in my car, it's podcasts or maybe a YouTube video for certain things sometimes.
Right,
You know,
right,
when I was
right.
on the train in college, I was on the train in Chicago. I'm not watching a video. I'm listening. I'm reading something. If I'm next to her and we're watching a TV show, I might Google something. I want to see the text. And I
Yeah,
guess my question to you, kind of two parts, would be, how do you guys address that? And then number two, does Google address that in
yeah.
any way?
So it's a great question. And there are a couple different things there. Okay. So number one, let me address why video. Why did we switch from being written to video first?
Mm-hmm.
Part of that switch was because one, the world's going towards video. Two, right, in the midst of doing that switch, Google made a change and they reclassified 45% of their database to be video first content. In other words, they wanted video on page one. Three, it's harder and harder today to get written content to page one than it's ever been. It's super easy to get video to page one. Okay. So that's number one, why video overall overarching. Okay. Now, that being said, it's imperative to also hear a subtle, can't say that word today, y'all.
You're good, bro.
It's what I'm saying is subtle,
Yeah.
not the way I'm messing up saying it,
Yeah.
but video first. Video first. It doesn't mean video only,
Mm-hmm.
right? So once you have a piece of video content, yes, you can take that piece of content and then turn that into a blog. Yes, you can take that and turn it into other social posts. Yes, you could take that and turn it into a podcast. Yes, you could take that and turn it into a bunch of other types of content, which you can also work to get ranked on page one. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unfortunately, it isn't something that we can control.
Right.
Right. And for our clients, especially, y'all know, y'all listening to me right now, y'all know y'all have sucked at marketing for a long time. Your websites suck. You don't have anything on page one, except maybe if someone searched your exact name.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, if we put a blog on your website, it ain't going to rank on page one.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, when Jason's at home at night and he wants to read something, he doesn't want to watch a video right now because he's curled up with his wife. Unfortunately, that's an opportunity that you're going to miss.
Mm-hmm.
Until you get to the point where your website is strong enough that it can rank there, but that takes time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That takes time. Does Google themselves pay attention to that? That's a really good question that I'll be honest, and I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that anybody outside of Google would, but I'm curious because in my mind, and yours probably too, when you think about it, it's like, okay, he's on his phone. Okay, he's geolocated here. It's this time of day. You know, like when I pull up the Starbucks now, that app is very close to my finger when I swipe on my phone,
Yep.
right? So I could see a case for like he's at this terminal, which means he's going to want to see video. He's at that terminal, which means he's going to see text. Or
Yeah.
The other question I had for you is we're essentially, we haven't said the word, but we're essentially talking about SEO, right? In terms of brand awareness, in terms of search, organic, etc. Talk to me about something that I think, and it doesn't have to be super in depth. How do we have SEO when we talk about social media? Because obviously we would love to participate and do participate in the social media stuff, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, whatever else, Twitter, X. So how does SEO work there? And has that changed at all in the past?
Yeah, it's a great question as well. So number one, we have to look at that on a platform by platform basis. So there isn't one broad answer. Number two, you have to also consider the goals. Okay. So when we say SEO, we have to understand that SEO is search engine optimization. Now, every platform has their own version of SEO built into that platform of how users inside the platform can find content. There's also the side of SEO that we talk about when we say SEO that we intrinsically mean, did it show up in Google search? Okay. So those are two separate different things. Now, when we're looking at, let's start with the Google search side, because that's easier, to be honest. YouTube, TikTok, Pinterest. Those are the only social platforms that Google will rank. And people say, hold on, you just said TikTok. Yeah, I did. Well, actually, no, and Twitter too, but Twitter's more on current news type stuff. So that is technically the fourth, or X, whatever they want to call it today.
Sure.
Okay. This one here is one that's huge that a lot of people are not paying attention to, and that is TikTok. Yes, of course. We started by talking about the fact that you can rank YouTube videos on page 1 of Google because Google owns YouTube. It only makes logical sense. However, we started helping clients rank TikTok videos on page 1 of Google as well. Yeah. Pinterest has always ranked well on Google. Okay. And Twitter, especially when it's current news and you have some celebrity, you can get ranked, but that's what it takes on Twitter. So that's getting ranked in Google. Now, platform-wise, Instagram sucks, and they don't seem to want to change. Facebook does not want to seem to change the algorithm from searching hashtags. It's not great for SEO. As a matter of fact, I think most of us have stopped banging our heads against it and just like, yeah, y'all suck. TikTok is phenomenal for their internal SEO. Okay. YouTube, obviously, phenomenal for their internal SEO as well. Same thing with Pinterest. The one that's going through the most changes in my mind, though, is LinkedIn.
Interesting.
And it's one that people are sleeping on. Okay. And it's because LinkedIn's in a place where they're like, hey, we got to do something.
LinkedIn's sleepy. I know why people are sleeping on it, because it's kind of sleepy.
It is. And so because of their, because Microsoft now owns them with Bing and all that other stuff, they have this wealth of data behind them that their search platform is actually getting better and better and better and better and better, faster than any other, save maybe TikTok. Okay. So yes, you can master SEO on different platforms. What that does create, though, is the reality that you can't put the same content on all the platforms and expect it to do well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I want to shift gears. Your show called Build Your Team, BYT.
Yes.
We've been talking a lot about video. We've been talking a lot about SEO. Why build your team? Why is that important to you?
In life, and if you're a business owner, I hope that you're listening to this and you can relate to what I'm about to say. There are certain things that you do that you don't even realize you're good at, and at some point someone pointed out to you and you're like, I never even thought about that. Right? Wasn't even a thing. I've had the pleasure of coaching. This is actually my first year not coaching football in the last 15 years.
That was going to be my follow-up. I love that. Go ahead.
Okay. So I've been coaching for a long time. I've coached athletes at lots of different levels. And I've built teams there and understood what it took. And in those teams, that was part of my role, other than coaching, was figuring out how we built the culture so that we had a team that was sustainable, that could achieve the goals they wanted to do. Had to realize that I was really great at doing that inside of my business. Now, truthfully, I wasn't always, right? But it's something that over time I've become really, really great at, and we build really strong team and really strong culture. Then the pandemic hit. And in the midst of the pandemic, I started recognizing how many of my peers had no clue what they were doing with their teams. And they were struggling. And not only were they struggling, but they were struggling in a way where they felt like they were the only one. And I guess that was one of the things I learned early in team building, was the same wind blows on all of us. And so if I'm having a problem with an employee, somebody else already had this problem and figured out how to solve it. If I'm having a dynamic issue, somebody else has figured out this dynamic and how to solve it. And I just got to go find that answer. And so I wanted to create something that really resonated with other business owners and had them say, hey, listen, it's okay. It's okay if you're struggling right now. Here's someone else who struggled too, made it through, right? Maybe hired wrong first, and then made it through and then had great success. Or like even in your case, who hired near, had great success with people who were near. And then when you went outside, it was like, oh crap, this didn't work. And then adjusted. There's so many different stories of how you can build your team. So I really wanted to share those stories so people were encouraged. So people were encouraged and realized the same wind blows on all of us. You're not a bad manager, you're not a bad owner, but doesn't mean you can't get better.
Yeah, so you've heard dozens of folks talk about their personal experiences in growing teams and managing teams, their failures, their successes. Are there any through lines that you think would help kind of anybody?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so before we started taking guests on the show, I just started publishing my thoughts on build your team, right? And the things that I had learned. And it's been, I'm not going to use the word hysterical, but almost hysterical to me that after interviewing dozens and dozens and dozens of entrepreneurs, the one thing that I keep hearing, which is the thing that I started the show with, is you've got to hire for fit before you hire for function. If you're just hiring, especially in the virtual world, if you're just hiring because they can do the job, if they can do the job, but y'all hate each other, it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Obviously, a lot of very well-respected people, books, authors, entrepreneurs have all have said that before. I think that's a really good one. What do you do when you're building a team? Talking about kids now, and some of these kids suck. Some of these kids are awesome. They're fighting about girls. They're fighting about this. They're fighting about that. This is a very different. How would you relate that compared to an entrepreneur, right? What do you do? How do you help a kid who's not good at sports, or how do you help a kid? What is, share a little bit of your experience there, because like you do straddle these two worlds, and one is the big leagues in some ways, and one is the minor leagues. What's that like?
So it's the exact same in both places. Okay, it doesn't change. It completely does not change. And the key here is understanding, and I'm going to deal with this kid who sucked, right? in that sense. Because I'll take you back to the first championship we won. And we had 18 kids on the team on the first championship we won.
Yeah.
And
wow.
Not all of them were great. And we had some first year kids who had never played before, right? It's incumbent upon us as the coach. It's incumbent upon you as the business owner to figure out, okay, you might suck, but you know what? There is this thing that you do really well. And we're going to focus on this thing. There was a kid, and I'm not going to call his name. He's older now. He's in college somewhere now, if he hasn't graduated already. And he was on the team, and he sucked. we just couldn't find a position for him. And he drove us nuts. Right?
Yeah.
And then one day, in the midst of his frustrations or something, he ended up kicking a ball. And we all turned in and said, what? He became our punter. He became our punter. And on the way to the championship, so it wasn't a championship game, but on the way to the championship, he, in a backed up situation, a kid that most of the people wanted off of the team, he punted the ball and saved us in that game.
That's great. That's a great story. I love that.
So here's the key. The key is you have to find what they're great at. Okay. Now, in a situation like, in that case, this was youth sports. In youth sports, I can't kick the kid off the team. I can't fire them.
Right.
And not only that, I got minimum play rules, so I have to play you. Right? It's not even like in high school where we're like, okay, just stay on the bench over there. Right? We can't do that. And so in those arenas, just like at work, you've got to find where they really great. And it may just be this one little thing that they're really great at. Great. Put them there and let them go. Now, obviously, once we translate over into the business world, you've got to ask bigger questions, right? Like, okay, so you're great at this little thing, but we're paying you this much, or this little thing is only worth that much to us. And so you may have to ask them to get off the bus.
Right.
Right. But that is the key. That is the key on the team. You have to know, and you have to find where they are great.
Yeah, it's interesting because as an entrepreneur, kind of speaking from the other side of this, as an entrepreneur, I do now sometimes coach about team, but it's certainly not my focus in the way that it has been yours and your experience as a coach as well. But what I've found is sometimes when I'm coaching people, in my brain, as you're talking, I'm even realizing it. I'm classifying them. Are they amateurs? Are they, experts?
Yep.
Are they pros? Yep. And if they're pros, I take out all the shock absorbers in the coaching. It's like, no, this sucks, and this sucks because of that. And here's the numbers why. You either are or you're not going to make the changes, and you either are or you're not going to get the result, period. Yep. And I find myself, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I find myself sometimes working with clients that I would refer to as amateurs, right? They're having a good time. They've already made some money, and now they want to, whatever, start a gym or something. And it's like, in the past, and I'm not working on it right now, but in that case, it's an amateur. I'm like, well, it's really up to you. Right now, you're essentially wasting money on advertising because nobody's clicking it and they're not responding to your messaging, and then when they come in, they're not getting answered the right way, and they're not. And do you find that you had to coach to amateurs in that way, or were you able to get a high level result and really? Because even just this podcast, I would love to have been down by 7 at halftime and have this guy with the Superman hat, doing all the stuff you're doing, the energy, your ability to put things into such fine points. How do you balance the desire for the team to succeed, to pursue excellence, to win with, this kid's feelings and how much he's actually paying attention?
Yeah. So first and foremost, there's a big old fallacy that exists that you communicate with everyone the same way.
Yeah.
You can't.
Right.
You just flat out can't. Beyond just experience level, you just have, in terms of the actual task, you have the personality differences. Okay. And so, on the coaching field, I know which kid I can yell at, and I know which kid I gotta hug. Okay. And you gotta get to know those things in the communication, even at the pro level. If they're the best player on the team, but they can't take you yelling at them, you need to put your arm around them and motivate them in that way. Great. If they're the worst player on the team, but the thing that they actually need is to see, you see what that kid did over there? That's what I need you to do. And they're going to respond to the competition. Great. You've got to get to know how to communicate with every single person. And that only happens. And so in our company, our number one core value is relationships. Relationships over everything else. I can't know how to communicate with Jason unless I have a relationship with him. Unless I've invested that time, I've studied. We're at the point now where in building those relationships, we're keeping documents on every single person and how we communicate with them so that we all know how to communicate with this person. From the time they interview with us on. How did they respond to this? How did they respond to that? Okay. Always. Now, that's one side. The other side of this is this. It's always important as well for people to understand where we're going and what their part is. You see, because that kid who was the kicker, in practice, he spent his entire practice far away from the rest of the team kicking, practicing his kicking. Now, he could have felt very disconnected from the team. We could have gotten into that semifinal game. We could have been backed up. He could have been feeling bad. Matter of fact, his parents did. His parents hated me. Okay? But he could have got into that game, His parents wanted him to quit, and he could have shanked that kick. We could have lost the game, and that wouldn't have been my first title. Instead, he and I had conversations 2-3 times a week. And I kept preparing him for, there's going to become a time when we're going to be backed up and we're going to need a major kick. I don't know when it is, because the team was good. Listen, he was the punter on a team that didn't punt but twice for the year.
Wow.
So that game was like his third time punting. In the regular season, we punted twice, and both of them, it happened over 2 games. It was his third time punting.
Yeah.
So you spent an entire season practicing. He had all right to be disgruntled. His parents were furious. But he sucked as a football player, but the boy could kick. He couldn't block, he couldn't tackle, he couldn't run, but the boy could kick. And so when that game came and we're backed up and it said, hey, listen, I need you to kick this ball. Not only do I need you to kick this ball, right? Because we were backed up on the 10. And so he's kicking from the end zone, and he's 9 years old.
This whole time in my head, I'm like, who are these kids? 9 years old. I love it.
He's 9 years old.
Oh, God.
And I'm like, dude, I need you to kick this ball, and I need you to get it past the 35 on our sideline. We're going to put our best gunner on this side, and he's coming down. And he's going to clean up the return man and try to get the return man to touch that ball so that we can scoop it up. Guess what? It's exactly what he did.
Wow.
We got the ball back, marched on the field, scored, we win the game. Why? Because throughout the entire season, he and I spent time, and I kept saying to him, we're going to need you. You've got a place to play. You got a part to play here. There's going to come a time when we're going to need this kick. I don't know when. And when it came, he was ready. You see, so when you have that player who's a marginal player, and you find where they're good, you got to also give them that vision. Because if you don't give them that vision, they'll lose heart because they don't see where they fit. They don't.
Yeah, I don't know how I could top that. I think that's a beautiful lesson. And so I guess I'll ask you the 2 questions that I ask everybody that comes on this show. Atiba, are you ready for those 2 questions?
I am ready for those 2 questions. Hit me.
All right, brother. First of all, before we do, first person I've ever had stand on the show, and it's like I'm watching a show. I love it. You have such great energy, man. This is awesome.
Thank you, my friend.
And I could have saved that for later, but I think everybody who's watching this is thinking the same thing. It's like watching a stand-up set where I'm learning how to be a better businessman and football coach. All right, so question number 1. If you had access to unlimited financial capital, how would you profitably grow your current business?
If I had access to unlimited financial capital, how would I profitably grow my current business? So I hope my answer doesn't sound counterintuitive, because I think it's super simple.
Okay.
Okay. If I had access to unlimited financial resources, the thing that I would do is ensure I would go find the top 1% of people that fit my culture in the world and pay them.
Yeah, I love it. I'm going to follow up question though. How would you find those people?
Yeah, that's always the tricky part, right? That's always
not about money, right? That's
yeah, that's always the tricky part. And fortunately, it's becoming easier, somewhat. It's still very hard, but it's easier than it was 3 years ago to find people around the globe. And so you're getting sites like Online Jobs at PH. You're getting Facebook groups that are popping up, and different things that are happening around the globe of people who are looking to work internationally, where you can go start to find those people. Now, the process of going through all of the people to find the top 1% is still daunting. And there is no easy way through that.
Except for ignoring the ones that were ChatGPT generated resumes.
Well, yes, you want to ignore the ones that unless that's what you were looking for,
right?
Like if you were hiring someone and you wanted the top 1% person who was going to write prompts for you, and all their responses were answered by prompts, and yeah, maybe you're good,
Sure.
Right? But if you are hiring a customer service rep and all of their answers are from ChatGPT, you got to wonder, can you actually communicate? right? So it's role specific in that way.
Yeah, great answer. Question number 2. If you had to give it all up, every business that you've professionally been involved in, and start something totally new that you've never done before, what do you think that might be?
So that's also another easy answer. Okay. And it's an easy answer because I've been thinking about that. And it's not so much in terms of giving it all up, but in terms of the what's next. And I'm at a place right now where my youngest child is 16 years old. I got 2 more years of high school with her before she leaves. Okay. My eldest is 24. She owns her own house. She's on her own. My son, he's in college right now playing college football, and I don't think we'll ever see him again. Like, I mean, he's going to come back and say hi and and be around, but he's not coming back home to live.
Man of the world.
Like, he's like, let's go conquer the world now, right? Which is great, which is what you want as a parent. And so I've got 2 more years with my daughter before she leaves. And so my wife and I have been planning for this for a lot of years. I am talking about this for a lot of years. And what we started planning 5 years ago was setting ourselves up for a live from anywhere lifestyle. Or sorry, work from anywhere and live from anywhere lifestyle, right? But within that is actually owning properties around the world that we become a property company, owning properties and renting them out, Airbnb or what have you, right? So if I had to give it all up and say, can't go back there, you got to do something next, that's where I'd go.
Oh, I like that. That's a good idea. It's something that we've kicked around a little bit as well. Atiba de Souza, you're a bad man. I appreciate you coming on. I love the way that you look at the way you serve your clients, at the world, the way you look at teams, the way you look at content and building awareness. Certainly, if somebody is still watching, it's because they have a lot of interest in what you have to say. Where can folks find you? Where can they find the podcast? Obviously, the links will be in the show notes. Where can people get a hold of you?
So listen, I love to talk to people, and I want to talk to you. More than even that, I love to answer your questions. Okay? Because I'm sure as we started, Jason and I started talking about video and that type of thing, it probably opened up some stuff in your mind. Hey, how can I shorten my sales cycle? Yeah, that'd be great. Sales faster. Let's go. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to meetatiba.com. That's meet, A-T-I-B as in boy, A.com. That's going to take you directly to my LinkedIn. When you get there, and I know Jason says LinkedIn's a sleeper, but guess what? That's what makes it great.
Yeah.
Because it cuts through all of the noise. You'll be able to get straight to me. Okay? When you get there, hit the more button and connect. Don't hit follow, hit connect. Once you connect with me, you can send me a message. Tell me you saw me on Jason's show. And let's chat. Let's chat. As far as the links to all my other properties, they're all there on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. Atiba, thank you so much for your time. You're welcome back anytime. Thank you so much. And thanks to listeners.
You're welcome. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you.
You too.